President Biden is on his first overseas trip to Asia since taking office. He's spending 4 days in South Korea and Japan. But as Nancy Cordes reports, there's already controversy.
The incident happened one day before President Biden landed in Seoul at his hotel. Sources tell CBS News that two Secret Service employees who were helping to prepare for the president's visit went out for a night of bar hopping. One of them allegedly got into a drunken altercation with a taxi driver. The Secret Service says the two were put on a plane back home and will be placed on administrative leave. It isn't the first time Secret Service agents have been accused of going overboard abroad. A prostitution scandal in Cartagena, Colombia in 2012 led to a new agency policy: no alcohol 10 hours before the start of a shift. The president is in Asia to bolster U.S. alliances at an uncertain time. Here in Seoul, he stressed the need to establish new supply chains that don't rely on competitors like Russia and China.
A critical component of how we'll do that, in my view, is by working with close partners who do share our values, like the Republic of Korea.
As he spoke, China was flexing its muscle with new military exercises in the disputed South China Sea. The White House was also bracing for a possible North Korean nuclear test. The Hermit Kingdom has already launched more missiles in 2022 than the previous 2 years combined. Ryu Hyun-woo, a former diplomat who defected from North Korea in 2019, says there's a reason those tests are ramping up. Right now is good timing, he says, because currently the U.S. is busy with the war in Ukraine. President Biden is in Seoul for another day and a half, meeting with South Korea's new president and with U.S. service members. Then he heads to Tokyo for an economic summit with the leaders of Japan, Australia, and India. Lana?
Nancy, thank you. For more on this, I am joined by Leslie Sanchez and Joel Payne. Leslie is a CBS News political analyst and Republican strategist. Joel is a CBS News political contributor and Democratic strategist, and it is always a pleasure to have you both. So, Joel, I'm going to start with you. What are the main challenges facing the president during his visit to South Korea and Japan?
Well, so there's a lot on the docket. Nancy's report, I think, detailed what the goals of this trip are, which is to strengthen alliances in that part of the world. Remember, any of these alliances with these folks that he's meeting with now, whether it's the South Koreans or the Japanese, is a counterweight to the Chinese, which, of course, is a big rival of the U.S. in that marketplace, both economically and also trying to stave off kind of some geopolitical concerns there. I think also, though, despite the fact that this is obviously a foreign trip and you're talking about foreign relations, it really relates to what's going on at home. The visit that he did today to the semiconductor factory relates to the supply chain and also to national security. And so I think the president is hoping that obviously you demonstrate the importance of these foreign relationships, but also keeping an eye on what's happening at home and what's affecting people in their pocketbooks here at home.
Well, Leslie, I'm going to ask you a little bit more about what Joel was talking about with domestic, but I don't want to move off of foreign just yet. So let's talk about the fact that President Biden's trip to Asia comes as the Russian invasion of Ukraine stretches on with no end in sight. What do you make of the timing of this trip?
There's no doubt that geopolitically, very much, I would say a lot in agreement with Joel, is that this is a deterrence mission and a strategic mission. Deterrence in the fact of any strategic actor, it is putting on record that the U.S. was going to continue to support a free and open Indo-Pacific. And they're going to support their allies who are seeing and hearing a lot of saber rattling from the Chinese right now. So it's an indication that the U.S. has not taken its eye off that long, strategic, very difficult relationship with China. But from a domestic perspective and looking at it abroad, I think there's going to be this one unifying sense that with the Ukraine effort, the bipartisan support for the Ukraine aid, you can see Republicans and Democrats standing together in a rare moment of bipartisanship to support what the president's doing and support a strong stance of the U.S. domestically and internationally. Those are the positives. Strategically implementing a lot of these changes to get into those pocketbook issues Joel talked about, that's going to be a harder bargain for the president.
So, Joel, Leslie says that that the pocketbook issues are not necessarily translating. And in fact, there's a series of crises that are happening here in the U.S. right now. You also alluded to this. Lawmakers and the White House are trying to address a shortage of baby formula. Inflation is up. COVID cases have been spiking. So How does the president balance his overseas agenda with his domestic one? And do you think it resonates with the domestic audience?
Well, the work of a White House never stops. And, what this White House has really struggled with is the last, I'd say, 9 to 12 months where you haven't been able to kind of predict and plan for what's happening. We didn't know a baby formula shortage was coming. We didn't know about the multiple variants of COVID-19 that were going to come and continue to cycle through the country. And so I think that this is the work of the presidency to translate this for the American people, that you're working on it. That's important to you. I think what's also challenging for the president right now is that these are all things that are closely felt at home. None of these things are esoteric. They are felt directly when people go to the gas pump, when you try to buy something at the grocery store. It's all right in your face, and it's nothing that you can say it's happening to someone else. It's happening to you directly, and that's a challenge this White House has to get past.
So, Leslie, Joel says that many of these issues were unanticipated, but members of the GOP have blamed Mr. Biden and the Democrats for some of those issues and say that he should have anticipated them. Most recently, the administration is being criticized for not responding quickly enough to the formula shortages. What's your assessment?
That was the biggest part of the president's campaign rally and campaign message, was that he was going to anticipate, organize, structure, and facilitate an end to the pandemic crisis, especially stateside. You didn't see that. We saw the massive spikes that we saw in the fall and the need for continuous testing. People questioned why the administration hadn't planned then. We have known about the closure of the Abbott lab for several months. They could have anticipated supply chain challenges here. Let's look at the border crisis, where, we didn't talk about that, but particularly the administration trying to move forward with the end of this mass exodus and removal of many of these migrants, with the trying to end the Title 42, which did not stand according to the most recent judicial call. But the point is, people are feeling that the president is not understanding nor taking the proper measures to alleviate these domestic challenges. And that's what they're going to be looking for in a midterm. A midterm is always a referendum on the president, but these continuous setbacks are certainly something the GOP is seizing upon. But it's very palatable to people at home if they're searching for baby formula, trying to pay for gas prices, and trying to ensure their children are safe.
So, Joel and Leslie, part of what we're all leading up to is how these issues are going to come into play during the midterm elections. Historically, we all know the party in the White House tends to lose seats in both the House and the Senate. Joel, I'm going to start with you. What needs to be the Democratic strategy ahead if they want to maintain the majority in the House and the Senate?
I think the president is doing it by demonstrating and showing the work. But something I also want to bring up here, a thing that's going to help Democrats is Republicans self-destructing a bit. And I say this with love to my friend Leslie, but she's got some candidates on her side. And I know that strategists like her are concerned about them because they are not focusing on the issue that you want to focus on. If you're a Republican, you want to talk about the economy, you want to talk about inflation. You don't want to be talking about targeting trans kids, or you don't want to be talking about restricting abortion rights. You got Herschel Walker in Georgia saying he wants a complete ban on abortion. Those types of extremist views are really the only thing that's going to help a Democrat this fall in an otherwise tough cycle.
So, Leslie, what do you think about Joel's the issues that Joel has labeled extremist views, and how do you think Republicans will make out come Election Day in November?
We've had some odd birds in the Republican Party. There's no denying that. I think on the right and the left, if we're going to be honest and transparent here, we know that. But where we miss the point, and I say we as a collective niceness in Washington, is there's a very strong sense the president and the country are moving in the wrong direction for a litany of those reasons, many of them economic. And people support freedom to provide for their families in a way that they feel is reasonable with national security, reasonable with domestic policy, reasonable with protecting their financial security, all of those things. And they're questioning the decisions that are happening right now. And if you want to say that it's just some extremes on the right, I would argue that there's a lot of conservative Democrats, the few that there are, Henry Cuellar in Texas being one of them, in really difficult re-elections in very Democratic areas that are looking like positive GOP wins and upsides because Republicans have gotten a lot more women of color, ethnic minorities to run as Republicans. So it's going to be a very interesting time.
All right, we're going to have to leave it right there. Leslie Sanchez, Joel Payne, thank you both.
Thank you.